You're listening to the Pasco Podcast with Mike Carballa. Welcome to Season 3 of Pasco Podcast, a series about leadership and public service. We'd like to thank our sponsors, the nearly 600,000 people of Pasco County, as represented by the Board of County Commissioners. It's through their trust and empowerment of our workforce and leadership team that we're able to bring you this podcast. This podcast is designed to help public servants build leadership skills and leverage them for success by sharing the experiences of our peers.
Hi, I'm Mike Carballa, and welcome to our 28th podcast of Pasco Podcast. Joining us today is Assistant County Administrator for our new Public Safety Branch, J.J. Murphy, and Emergency Services Director, Captain Dan Olds. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me today. It's a great opportunity. I know, J.J., you're brand new to the organization. Dan, you've been around a while, but it's a great opportunity for us to talk about leadership and just some shared lessons from your career. So, J.J., I want to start with you. You're the newest member of our team. We're happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to Pasco County.
So I was born and raised in Philadelphia. I did an internship my senior year in the local city hall, and I just fell in love with local government and have been involved in that and the military ever since. I did ROTC through grad school, came out, and when I came off active duty, started working in local government, and I've bounced around the country just trying to serve the public. I consider myself a servant leader, and this isn't a job for me. It's a passion, and I love serving local government. And when the opportunity presented itself in Pasco County, I did my military reserve duty in Florida. I've wanted to come back, and I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, well, we're happy to have you, and local government, I often have said, is a calling for a lot of folks. I did a great talk with folks this morning, just at our latest new hire class, and so I've come and generally try to talk to them on their first day, and it amazes me how many Pasco County residents we have. It's fantastic to be able to live, work, and play in your community. But secondly, how they really believe in the mission. When you really start talking to them, why is it that you want to do what you do? And we like to help. We want to serve, and I think that's something that's just part of our ethos. Those of us that have been in local government. I know when I finally came to local government 8 years ago, this is where I want to be. This is just fantastic. So, Dan, same to you. I mean, I know you've been around a while, but talk to us a little bit about yourself and how you came to work for Pasco County.
So I'm a fifth generation Floridian, lived here my whole life. At 14, I joined the Sheriff's Office Explorer program, and so I've been at the Sheriff's Office for a total of 28 years, 23 as a deputy. And then I joined the county 8 years ago as the director of 911.
No, that's fantastic. So you've had opportunities probably within the Sheriff's Office and Pasco County to lead. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about your leadership philosophy?
So I believe that we should be servant leaders. I believe in supporting our staff and getting them what they need. So that's the thing that sometimes is difficult when you get into a leadership role, is to remove yourself from the day-to-day and to work on the things that only you can control and make their lives better. So servant leadership, I identify as getting, downstream, helping them remove obstacles and just supporting them doing their job and letting them grow by making decisions as much as possible. Yeah, absolutely.
JJ, same question. You mentioned servant leadership as well. Maybe expand on that a little.
I'll expand on it. I think you really, the two key pieces I look for in my leadership is committing to the people and committing to the community. And that means that commitment is not 9 to 5. That commitment is 24/7. If you have somebody that so I just heard this morning we had somebody who works in our jail lost their home this past weekend in a fire. So making sure I'm doing what I can to set up the infrastructure to help support that family. And so they see that. And you have built that in this organization to take care of the people. And I want to make sure that I carry that forward. It's been part of my ethos for a long time. But also when you step outside the building, that the people know out there that you're here to do whatever. I ended up being in this parking lot at 6:30 Friday. All the cars were gone, and somebody rolled up, and they think they lost their wallet. Well, I just tried to take the extra time going around the building that I had access to help them find it. We couldn't find it, But he knew then, like, look, I found that, and I never gave him my title or anything. He has no idea who I am. But it's just going those extra steps. And there's so many employees in this organization who I have already seen take that extra step that it energizes me to be here and join that effort.
Yeah, I watch that every day now that I'm over here on the West Pasco Government Center side of looking at our employees, and there's a lot of commerce running back and forth with our constitutional offices, our building permits, and folks that are just willing to go out there and help folks, and just recognize that service excellence mindset is across the board, and it's not just narrowed down to my apartment. Heck, even I've run into people in the elevator, and I know they're going to the second floor. I know they're going to building permits, but I'll walk them somewhere as well, just because. That's just what we do, and it's fantastic. So you talk about being ROTC, so we've got a similar path there. Both military officers at one point in time. When and how did you realize that you wanted to do things like that? To lead other people.
I think it was when I went to college, and I was a hockey player in high school and did not go to a college to necessarily play hockey, and they didn't even have a team. And I restarted that program, and building the team from scratch and being the captain on the ice, and setting an example to go out and skate a little harder and take the sacrifices. And I just transitioned that into the military, and I transitioned that into local government. I know there's people who think they're born leaders, or they talk about born leaders. I desire to be a leader. I desire to go out and help people. Mm-hmm. So it started early in my college career.
No, that's fantastic. Well, we've got a heck of a hockey team for you to kind of help standing up a new branch. So I'm sure a lot of similarities there. Dan, same to you. When did you realize, you wanted to lead? You've kind of gone through successive iterations in your career. Now you're running this very important and vital operation for the county. Talk to us a little bit about that. So
when I was 15 in the Explorers, much like ROTC, it has a rank structure to it. Mm-hmm. And I was able to start leading at that level in a volunteer organization. And then when I got to the sheriff's office, I did several years at line level, and then decided that, I feel like I can make a difference. And the biggest thing that I always wanted to do as a leader was to make people's lives better that work at the agency or the department. We spend more time with our work family sometimes than our home families. Mm-hmm. And so that can impact home. And so I always felt it was a great responsibility to eliminate unnecessary stress and try to just project calm and make it a better place for everybody. Fantastic. Is there any one particular person or persons who's had the biggest influence on your leadership? So, I've had a lot of different supervisors over 23 years, and I've learned a little bit from a lot. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's any that I've truly modeled myself after. Read a lot of leadership books. Colin Powell is somebody that sticks out in my mind that I always enjoyed how he led and how he described leadership. And then, culture is a big thing, especially nowadays. And my wife is a leader. She's actually a principal at a local high school. And so she is tremendous at that. And so especially in the last few years, I've really been paying a lot of attention to how she does things and seeing how I can make those fit into 911. Oh, fantastic. JJ, same question back to you there.
I would actually say, Dan and I have a lot of the same, readers or presidents or formal leaders. For me, it's my brother. He is the one in our family who first did ROTC. He did it through college, and then I ended up joining through grad school. And watching him in his career and stepping out and being, getting the opportunity to teach at West Point and the opportunity to go to the 82nd Airborne and then volunteer to go to Iraq, I tried to model some of my same things. As a reservist, I wasn't required to deploy, but I put my hand up twice to go and take billets that other officers weren't taking, so that I had an opportunity to help the U.S. government. So I would think my brother, he was the first Iraqi war veteran elected to Congress. He decided like there was no politician in our family, and he came back from his deployment and said he wanted to go to D.C. to help change the war policy. So I think he had aspirations, but he put actions behind those. And so I kind of try to model my leadership after that.
That's fantastic. It's a good lesson for all of us, actually, and always to have a role model or someone, or in this case, I'm kind of with you a little bit there. I've got a blend, but to have someone just in your own family that's fantastic. Imagine family dinners. Yeah. So,
right.
JJ, why don't you talk to me a little bit about, over the course of your career, leadership challenges maybe that you've had or successes, anything that you want to share that you think might be of interest to our listeners here?
Sure. And Dan, we really haven't had a chance to talk too much, but I think it's important to note that 17 of my 20 years in the Air Force was working at America's 911 Center at the Air Force Rescue Coordination Center. So I was a call taker for the federal government responding to search and rescue across the country. The story that really hits home for me, like the why for me in government, is I had an elected official come to me, came back from a conference and handed me a big folder and said, "Hey, JJ, there's this program called Field of Flags, an honor field. We want you to run this program and bring it to Pennsylvania." So I did it. I was in the military. Of course, they're going to give it to me. And we put this field of flags up. We had an American flag for every victim of 9/11. It was an unbelievable field. The governor came out. It was great. My kids were involved. But about 30 days after the field came down, and everyone forgot about this project, I'm sitting in the mayor's office, and we're dealing with like the problem of the day. Like, here we are, and there's a knock on the door, and the administrative assistant comes in and says, "Hey, there's this lady here, Mayor, who wants to give you a gift." He's like, "Okay, bring her in." And she says, "I did this painting for you, Mayor, for this the healing field that you had." And he's like, "Ma'am, I can't accept that. JJ did all the work. I'm glad he's here." And she gave it to me. And I didn't show like the appreciation. I was appreciative, but I thought I had to get back to the potholes or the storm sewer that we had to emergency bid on, whatever the problem. And I start like walking her out after 2 minutes, like, "Okay, thank you, And she grabbed me by the shoulders and she said, "No, you don't understand. I was about to commit suicide. And one of those flags hit me when I was in the field. And I'm living today because of that field." And I have that picture of that field that she drew wherever I go, because in local government, oftentimes we don't know the end result of how we handled that call or that project that we did or the housing or the homelessness camp. But there is an impact that we do every day. So that's kind of like my why. It's a reminder that, I'm going to walk through these doors. I may not get a thank you. I may not know the end result, but what we do in local government matters. We make an impact every day. So
Fantastic. Dan, let's talk about over the course of your career, any leadership lessons that, stick out for you?
Well, I've found that, just giving support and being there for people is a huge piece. And so being there for the folks in 911 and trying to find as many ways to alleviate obstacles or stress for them is important. Anecdotally, I hear people about 7 times a day out there giving CPR on the phone. So there's just a tremendous amount of really good work that goes on. And so they really deserve a ton of credit that they're kind of the hidden heroes of our public safety area. But that for me, just supporting them while they're the ones on the front lines doing that is super important to me.
Yeah, and it's important as leaders to provide that support, because without that support, they're not going to be able to do that as effectively or feel as comfortable to do. So the fact that they know you've got their back, they know you're taking care of them. It's fantastic. And then back to your point of just, you sometimes don't even know these intangibles that, you're fortunate to even find out, and it's moving. Just imagine all the other things that have gone on that our team members have affected that we don't know about, that feedback doesn't get back. So it's certainly great to hear. Talk to me a little bit, either one of you guys here. We talk about sharpening the saw and getting better at things. You mentioned reading and things. I'd like to know if there's anything in particular that either of you do to kind of help hone in your leadership skills. I always consider myself to be a student all the time. So talk to me a little bit about how you increase that capacity to lead and grow in that regard.
I'm going to go first. Go ahead.
All right. So, reading is big. I utilize audiobooks and podcasts a lot because I can multitask. So I can still take out the trash while I'm listening to something,
Absolutely.
and drive to meetings. But there's a tremendous amount of material out there nowadays. It's very easy to get to where you don't have to sit down necessarily on a chair and read a book. So I try to find, different schools of thought. Military is big because in my background, you're talking about making decisions that are life or death that maybe don't apply to the more administrative world. But I find those to be important. And then, we're dealing with a young generation. And so I think it's important to listen to what major corporations are doing that are on the cutting edge of work environment and how that's changing. So all those are pretty important and useful things for me.
Absolutely. JJ, same question.
So I consider myself a lifelong learner like you. I'm currently enrolled in a PhD program. I'm writing a dissertation now. It's challenging. But I think in terms of professional development, what's been successful for me is opening the opportunities that have been for me to continue those for the employees that work with me and invest in their professional development. And that's like, you can come back, you can be a wizard, but if your employees don't feel like you're supporting their professional development, then you're going to be the smartest guy out the door, right? So I think that's important. And one thing, I started a program years ago. I went to like an ICMA conference and heard this presentation, and I called it Operation Switch, and Switch was an acronym for Stop Working in the City Hall.
Okay.
So it's going out and working side by side with some of the employees, sitting there with a 911 operator, going out there, but letting them see you pick up trash like they pick up trash, or, go in the, with the wastewater treatment guys and go down and smell what they smell every day, right? But when you do that, right, and the whole officers eat last concept, right? They have a little bit more pep in their step. Like they know that if the people at the top are making decisions that have knowledge now of what you do, you make a lot smarter decisions. So, and I think that's years and years of different reading. That's a model that's kind of set it and forget it.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing too is just even the nuggets of wisdom that you gather just from our own folks every day, listening to that knowledge that they've gained through their experiential endeavors that, I can learn a thing or two. And I think that does nothing but make us better at what we do and having that understanding of what our folks do day in and day out. We have a lot. I mean, we were just talking about recruiting. We were talking about special risk class and things like that. The jobs that a lot of our folks do, quite honestly, are very dangerous. I mean, inherently, whether it's, working in a jail or fire rescue, we talk about the mental stress of being 911 to folks in the field that quite honestly have cars and traffic running by them every day to, just animal services, dog bites. I mean, I can, the list can go on there, and it's the jobs are getting tougher and filling these billets are getting harder and harder. So really kind of a two-part question is how are we approaching, recruiting and bringing folks into the organization, but at the same time, we want to deepen the bench. You mentioned it too, that, if you're the leader and you're the only guy getting educated, you're the last guy out the door, first guy out the door, forget how you phrased it, roll the tape back. But, somebody's got to be there to take our place. And I always look at it as at the top here, we're kind of interchangeable and replaceable. We want the culture to develop the leaders so the organization continues to run. I went on vacation for 2 weeks. Nothing shut down. Okay. So talk to me a little bit, two parts, recruiting a little bit and efforts to try to get people, but then more importantly, how are you raising the next Dan, the next JJ? What are we doing in that regard? So maybe JJ, we'll start with you and then move across.
I think the first thing is letting the public know. If you're out there in a job that you don't go home every day feeling like you've made an impact, come work for Pasco County. Whether it's 911 or our jail or fire rescue, like those jobs make a difference. And if you want to make a difference and have good health care and work for an organization that helps pay for your college tuition or does reimbursement, like this is where to come. So the first thing is like, hey, if you're listening to this podcast, like, and you're working where you're not feeling that level of satisfaction, come put an application in. There's 20 vacancies in 911. There's 90 vacancies right now in the jail. And with overtime, you're starting at close to $80,000. $80,000, right? So, that's the first thing. The other is kind of doing a little bit of an all hands approach. Like, so it's not just you recruiting for your specialty. It's us coming together and say, hey, how can we all put that message out there and work with our communications team, right? And say, let's really do a focus on the great things we offer here. And I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, one of the things that I was having this discussion actually with one of our county commissioners as well, and we were talking about people and hiring and things. And one of the conclusions that we come to, and I mentioned it today at the new hire orientation, is we have 57 lines of business in this county. So if you're contemplating leaving the county, for example, well, consider one of our other business units, right? I mean, 57 lines. So if you decide that you're really not liking working in whatever shop you're working in and you want to go be a corrections officer or you want to go do something, we have those opportunities and we can afford those opportunities within the same family. At 3,700 FTEs, I mean, it's 3,700 different jobs that we've got here, and it's a fantastic opportunity. Dan, what about you guys on the recruiting side of the house?
So we're definitely trying to gear ourselves towards the high schools. So at the end of this school year, as we get through spring, we're going to be going to the high schools because we really want to get people who aren't planning to go out of the area for a 4-year university and say, look, you may not stay in 911 your whole career, but you can at least start a retirement system, which is something that doesn't exist very many places. And it's something. And so we're looking to target people who we think will be primed to do this kind of work, to stay up late, to do the shift work, to have that kind of a schedule, for one. And two, we're trying to find new mediums to get to people. So we could go to a recruiting event and maybe hit 100, or we can work with the communications team and do a few fast, maybe minute or less videos, which is kind of what the average consumption is nowadays with TikToks and Reels and such.
There, right? Yeah.
Right. And so talk about, what do we do? What's our hiring process? Everybody wants to research everything now and get the answers. So sometimes the hiring process for 911 is scary for folks. So let's take away a little bit of the scariness and go, look, here's a polygraph. You're going to answer this many questions. Here's what a psychological test looks like, and just walk them through it. So it kind of eliminates some of that fear to where maybe that person who was on the fence will apply. And so those are some of the things that we're looking at right now.
Fantastic. Now, what about within your teams? And JJ, I know you're still relatively new here to the county, but within your teams, right? So you've identified maybe the next Dan, I don't know, or the next supervisor, manager, ACA, or replacements or whatever. What do you do? How do you identify those future leaders, and how do you, I guess, raise them, to kind of help get them to where they need to be? Any thoughts on that?
I think I touched on it earlier. I mean, work on their, I like to sit down with the people who are direct reports and find out what their goals are. Right. And if you know their goals, right. And I just had this meeting last Friday with my new executive assistant and a program manager. And I asked them to go home for the weekend and think about what their goals are so that I know how I can help get them there. Right. And, one has a master's degree, The other one, like, I think it's important to know where they want to go and then help. And when they help, when they see that you care about where they want to end up, because what I said is, I know your lifelong dream hasn't been this job you're currently in, right? So what is it, hopefully in this one of the 57 lines of business, right?
Right.
Is it that we can do to inspire you?
Yeah.
Right. And
and that's one of the, that's the other thing that we as leaders too have to realize. I mean, I have direct reports who I know their next step is not going to be here at the county, and as painful that will be for me and the organization or whatever it is, our job is to help people grow regardless. And if we continue that pays itself forward so many times if we approach that honestly and genuinely. Dan, what about on the 911 side? Are you guys doing anything formally or informally to kind of help identify and raise the next future leaders there?
So we do. We talk about goals. We have in-service trainings that we provide. Outside leadership training we'll send folks to every once in a while. But I try to preach about having an attitude, a good attitude, and that, you can learn. Eventually, if you go high enough, you'll be over something you have no idea about, technically speaking. And so if you have a good attitude and you're approachable and you try to quell any ego and be humble and learn, you'll be successful. And so I've always tried to explain to folks, sometimes we get to give people opportunities that maybe in a perfect world they're not necessarily ready for. But I say, if you approach it with a good attitude and you're humble, you'll be totally fine. And that has absolutely been the case 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, and I find that humility piece to be extremely important in leadership. So I guess last question, is there anything I didn't ask you maybe we should have talked about with regards to any tools or wisdom you care to impart upon the masses here?
You look at me.
We could ask
You know
Raider.
what? Do not. Well, that's what I'm going to say. Be vulnerable, right? I have a service dog because I spent the 2 years in COVID as a CEO struggling to worry about everybody else's mental health and didn't care about my own, right? So I would tell everybody out there, don't, invest in your own self-worth. And so if you see me walking around with Raider, it's actually a sign of strength.
Fantastic. Love it. Dan?
I mean, I would just say that you really, I think we're in a transitional period in the business world. And I think that we need to pay extra attention about what is important to folks when it comes to recruiting and retention. I feel like there's a lot of learning to be done in the next several years out there. And technology is going to be a piece of that. And then just keeping up with the ever-changing world that we live in.
Agree. Well, guys, that brings us to the end of that. I do have a couple of rapid fire questions I'd like to ask you, though. Just entertaining. It's okay. We'll start easy here. Dan, I think we know the answer to this. What was your first job?
I worked at Winn-Dixie as a bagger, and I'm glad that still exists because I feel like everything as you get older starts to go away.
It certainly does. JJ, what movie do you enjoy quoting the most?
Quoting the most, I think it would have to be Gladiator.
Gladiator. I love it. Well, I won't ask you what quotes you want, but Dan, you speak more than one language?
No.
Favorite subject in school?
Social studies.
Social studies. Outstanding. I know the answer to this for you. Cats or dogs, Dan? Raiders listening.
I have more cats than I do dogs.
Oh, look at that. Sorry, Raider.
No
most random statistic you know?
In poker, if you flop a certain thing, like certain hand, you have like a 27% chance of hitting a flush if you hit two on the flop.
Fantastic. I'll have to remember that the next time we play. Would you rather travel to the past or to the future?
Past.
Awesome. Favorite pizza topping?
Italian sausage.
Love it. Last TV show you watched, Dan?
Ooh, because of my wife, something on Bravo, I have a feeling.
You're like me. Did you stay awake long enough there?
Right.
Yeah.
I was listening to a leadership podcast. She was watching it.
Chore you despise the most, JJ?
chore I despise the most. Picking up after Raider.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Dan, same question.
What was the last question?
Chore you despise the most?
Ooh, laundry.
Laundry. I'm with you on that one for sure. Well, listen, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me here today on Pasco Podcast. It was great having you both here. And special thanks to our media relations team who makes this effort possible. And thank you for joining us for this episode of Pasco Podcast. I'm Mike Carballa, and we'll see you next time.
For more information on Pasco County government, please visit mypasco.net and check us out on Facebook and Twitter.